Hello everybody and welcome to GCI's Wealth Tour 2020. The day is finally here and I have personally been so excited for today to arrive because we have some amazing speakers for you. My name is Don Packett and I get to spend the next 90 seconds with you explaining why we're here. So a Wealth Tour normally happened where the team would go from city to city and spend quality face-to-face time with clients and providers and potential clients. But obviously because of the COVID pandemic, we weren't able to do that. Safety is definitely first, and our priority is to make sure that everyone is all okay. So we've brought Wealth Tour to you, into your home, into your office, whether you're sitting in New York right now and it's 4 a.m. and you're in your bed and you're watching this here, thank you very much for joining us. Or if you're all the way on the other side of the world, Sydney, Hong Kong, and your day is ending, I know for a fact this will be the best end to your day. So we're in a platform called Crowdcast. As you can see over here, there's the chat area where some eager beavers started chatting, including myself, weeks before the time. And at the bottom here, there's a little button that says ask a question. And if you have any questions for the speakers at any times, just pop them in here. And during the Q&A, we'll try to get to them as best as possible. If we don't, we'll then answer them at a later stage. But you're not here to see me, you are here to see the real important people. So to kick it off from a GCI perspective, I want you all please to give a personal, in your own homes, round of applause for the founder and CEO of GCI, Mr. Alex Cook.
Don, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world, and welcome to our 15th annual Wealth Tour. I'd like you to imagine the world that we imagine. A world where everyone knows their financial status. A world where everyone has planned for every single goal that they would like to achieve in their life. In this world, people would look back on their deathbed with peace, knowing that everything they wanted to achieve had been achieved thanks to detailed planning. Now, detailed planning includes provision for unforeseen events. Who would have thought that 1 year ago we'd be confined to the picture on the right-hand side of your screen? Circumstances can change on a dime. Things change quickly. When things change, both for the good and for the bad, you don't want that affecting your financial plan. We need to be in a position where we can take advantage of both good luck as well as bad luck events. Some might say that planning for such a specific bad luck event is impossible, or that planning for the rest of your life is impossible, or that aiming to achieve every single one of your goals and aspirations is impossible. Impossible until it's done. We love that quote by Nelson Mandela. This is something we truly subscribe to. It all starts with a plan. So why do we choose this year's topic of growth, purpose, sustainability? Why GPS? The GPS we all know about is this sort of a GPS, where you plug in your destination and your GPS plots a route taking into account traffic and so on to get you to your destination. A financial GPS isn't quite as simple because there are so many unknown variables. What is our GPS? What is our growth, purpose, and sustainability? Well, it all starts with purpose. Purpose sits at the center of both growth and sustainability. And what it gives you is your true north, your ultimate direction. Now, purpose isn't something that anyone's going to force on you. No one's going to say, why haven't you got a purpose? It's up to you to decide that you want a purpose. This is our purpose, to change the face of retirement. And by changing the face of retirement, what we are aiming to do is to create millions of financially happy people. People that are achieving their objectives and their purpose in life. Growth. I first read about this story in Jim Collins' book, Great by Choice. And what he describes is a race to the South Pole. There were two famous explorers, Scott and Amundsen. Scott's party was really well funded, and their strategy was to walk as far as they could each day during the good times, and during bad times when there were blizzards, to hunker down inside their tents. Scott's party, they did reach the North Pole 34 days after Amundsen, who decided that his strategy was going to be to walk 20 miles at a time. Whether the weather was good or there were blizzards, he was going to walk 20 miles at a time. On Scott's return trip, unfortunately, him and his entire party perished. They all died. Amundsen made the 400 miles back over ice and snow safely home. There are so many lessons in this. What struck me about Amundsen was the power of marginal incremental gains. Making smart, incremental, purposeful decisions over a long period of time yields phenomenal results. Sustainability. Does this mean building things that last? No. What it means is building things that remain fit for purpose to achieve your ultimate objective, your ultimate purpose. The bridge of Choluteca in Honduras illustrates this point perfectly. And this is a bridge built like no other. It was built by the Japanese between 1996 and 1998. And they built it to withstand the hurricane forces that are prevalent in the Caribbean. The year it was commissioned, a Category 5 hurricane, a Category 5 storm, hit the Caribbean and wiped out every single bridge in Honduras, all except for one, this bridge. This bridge was virtually untouched, which should have been amazing. There's one small problem though. The storm deviated the river around the bridge, and the bridge was rendered completely useless. A great lesson in sustainability, which leads us to our sustainability metric, which is our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal. Our big, hairy, audacious goal ensures that we remain true to our purpose. We remain on track. And that is to get 150,000 people to either be in or on their way to a safe retirement by the year 2025. And this is the software that we've chosen to help track our metric. Using WealthBit, we're able to understand each of our clients' plans individually and as a collective, with the added benefit that our clients are able to log into their plan themselves and really take ownership. It's phenomenal. Some valuable data insights we've gathered from WealthBit are that our clients' numbers have actually increased by 2,000 over the past 12 months, which is great. Of the clients, the 7,800 clients that we're looking after, 3,500 of them have a plan, which needs to increase. We need all of them to have a plan. However, of the clients that have a plan, 23% of them are either in or on their way to a safe retirement, which is incredible. The global average is around 6%, so it's well above global standards. Are we satisfied? No, it is not good enough, but it's a very good start. What's also encouraging is that our clients are logging on to their plan far more frequently and more clients are logging on. This exponential graph shows us that. These valuable insights that we're gathering from WealthBit are helping us to construct more ways to get more clients into the green, into that safe zone, and help keep them there. So this is just one of the ways that we're helping to change the face of retirement, where clients start planning for life rather than planning for one date. Part of sustainability is making sure that we make more right decisions than wrong decisions, and ensure that we don't become a bridge to nowhere. Our core values help us with each decision we make. As an example, the core value of independence. We made the decision to take GCI funds out of GCI. Made it very easy. Another one of our core values is that of community, where we believe in the power of partnership, where 1 + 1 really can equal 3 for our clients. What we want to do is focus on planning, financial planning. What we need our investment guys to do is focus on making sure they get those incremental gains for our clients. Cinnabar Investment Management do just this. They're a global fund manager who just happen to be based in Cape Town. What they do is they scour through hundreds of thousands of opportunities and rationalize them down to a few simple choices, and then continually get those incremental gains by making moves on a regular basis within each portfolio. Greg, the Chief Investment Officer for Cinnabar Investment Management, is going to take us through a few of their slides and a bit of their thinking. Greg, over to you.
Thank you, Alex. It's an honor to be on the screen with you today and with Mark and of course with David. Not every day that I get to share with amazing legends like them. And as you've alluded to, our job is about simplifying complexity, so let's get straight into it. In preparation for this presentation, I did a bit of research into how a Formula One car is put together. And I came up with the slide that shows the 80,000 parts that go into a vehicle. I'm an engineer by training, and as a kid, I just loved to take things apart. And this would have been the most amazing thing to take apart. All that information, all those parts that have been carefully made, and the engineering team, they put it all together. They make sure that it's all finely tuned so that you produce this really powerful vehicle that the driver can then take on to win the race. David obviously doesn't know what all 80 parts do. He just needs to know the main parts. And the key issue here is for him to trust that the team has put everything together and set it up. They're the experts in preparing that vehicle. He's the expert in driving the vehicle. And together, they're the experts to win the race. And that's what it comes down to. And that's sort of complexity simplified. It's where you take all the different parts of something, and there's different experts, different parts, and you take all that information and you make it simpler into a simpler package, so that you get to the final result, which is what you're trying to do, is to get good performance. And this is what Cinnabar's mission and purpose and philosophy is: complexity simplified. That is our main purpose in the world. Now, when we put our global portfolios together, we have this vast universe of funds to look at. There's over 200,000 unit trusts that we can bring into our portfolios, and generally we want to just use 7 of them. The key thing is to take all that complexity and simplify it, and produce that portfolio that will get that consistent performance. One of the proprietary tools that we've built for ourselves is the risk dial score. And you can see here 6 dials. This is 6 of 24 that we've put together. There's at least 8 different inputs that go into each of these. And we take this, and what it does is it takes the complexity of all the information that's out there and distills it down into a clear dial that we can use to build our portfolios. And you can see that we cover the whole world. And even when we're looking at South African portfolios, it's important for us to look at the whole world as a whole, because actually investing is done in a global sense. And speaking of globally, we think of our portfolios in dollars. It's critical to understand that the dollar is still the reserve currency of the world. The US is the dominant GDP, dominates GDP in the world. It's 60%. And it's critical that you think of your portfolios in a global sense. And at the end of the day, much like a Formula One team, and as I'm sure David's going to speak about, every expert has their part to play. We all know that we have to give our best, and then the whole collective can win together, and we can achieve the performance that we're looking for. It's been a pleasure to be able to speak to you today, and I really look forward to listening to David next. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg. That gives us great insight as to how many factors there are to consider when making a decision. What struck me about your entire presentation was the highly disciplined and structured approach that you take with decision making. It gives me great comfort. To wrap up, before we hand over to DC, as we are now affectionately allowed to call him, I'd like you to consider your own GPS. First of all, have you got a purpose? A very good way of figuring out what your purpose is to zoom out and look at your life from a higher level view. Figure out where you want to end up, and then zoom in and make sure the detail gets achieved. Second of all, put a plan in place to achieve your long-term, then your medium-term, and then your short-term goals. And constantly assess whether what you're putting in place is going to be sustainable to make sure that your purpose is achieved. So that's enough about us. Let's hand over to DC, and I'm sure you're all wondering why we asked him to join this wealth tour. Why we asked him to join a wealth tour on GPS. Well, DC is one of the most purpose-driven individuals we have ever come across. He has planned his life out from the age of 14 to where he is now. It's just phenomenal, and it did not happen by accident. He's joined on stage by Mark Gallagher, who's no stranger to the F1 scene. And unfortunately, DC had a prior commitment, but they managed to make a plan and pre-record the interview, which they're going to take us through now. So on behalf of myself, all of our clients, and everyone within GCI, welcome DC, welcome Mark. We're really looking forward to this interview.
David Coulthard wins the Monaco Grand Prix.
It's going to be awesome.
David Coulthard is in the lead going into the first corner. Scotland are brave. A wonderful victory. Coulthard wins the Italian Grand Prix. Victory at Spa in Belgium. Coulthard from Twynham, Scotland, wins the British Grand Prix for McLaren.
Unleash the horses!
Coulthard leads. Fantastic start.
Coulthard for Red Bull.
Magnificent performance. David Coulthard making history.
So, David, really good to see you. And in this very strange year of the coronavirus pandemic, how has it been for you? Because you've literally just kicked off what's been a very intense start to the Formula One season, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I think it's everyone's had to deal with this changing world, and depending on what particular industry, what business you're in, of course, some have been more affected than others. So by way of example, within my family, we have a trucking business that has operated since 1916. And my brother operates that business, and he's been running white hot because there's been a big supply chain demand. On the other side, I have a production business, I have an events company, and of course, there's been a shrinking, a contraction, and a slowing down in that arena. So it's, from a first-hand family experience point of view, I get a little insight to maybe how other people in other industries are being affected. But of course, the most important thing is to obviously cut your cloth according to your means at any given time, and to find opportunity. And coming from a sporting background, and Mark, we both worked in the industry of Formula One, and as a collective, whether it's the drivers, whether it's engineers, mechanics, marketing staff, media, they're always looking for a way to seize opportunity. And out of failure, very often, we get our biggest inspiration. Of course, none of us want to fail, but by definition in sport, you cannot win them all. And therefore, I think our mindset in this industry is quite adaptive to dealing with difficult situations, even though, of course, no one would have foreseen just the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Now, you mentioned the word shrinking. Let's talk about growth, because we all want to get back to a world of growth. And you've had a very successful career in Formula One. And you and I have often talked about the fact that, from an early age, yourself and also with your father, developed a plan for growing your career step by step towards your goal, your purpose, which was ultimately to get to Formula One. Just talk me through the kind of growth plan that you had for your career.
Well, as I've already touched on, I grew up within this transport family. Now, it's a family business, so it's not some sort of big international conglomerate. It's been handed down from generation to generation. And it involves an all hands on deck approach to the family business. So whether it was my mother, whether it was, say, my brother now is in the business, and other family members and the staff that we have. So I grew up with this very visible work ethic within the household and felt very much a part of that. So my father's passion was motorsport, but sadly he wasn't able to see that into being a career. But when he had two sons and a daughter, we were all encouraged into motor racing. My older brother wasn't particularly interested. I was, and my sister was. So we competed. And I was showing that I was developing quite nicely. And my father really had a confidence that I had the talent that was necessary to go forward. So at the age of 14, I remember watching one of the Grand Prix with him. And there was an ex-Grand Prix driver called James Hunt, who was a commentator at that time. He retired from Formula One. And my father said to me, son, once you get to Formula One, if you're lucky, your career will be 10 years. So you have to plan beyond that. Now, bear in mind, I'm 14 years old when he's having this conversation. Fast forward 10 years, I'm now a Grand Prix driver. Fast forward 15 years, I'm coming to the end of my Grand Prix career. But I had already put in place a conversation with the BBC to become a pundit and commentator. So when I retired at the end of November 2008, come March 2009, I'm at the first Grand Prix working in television. So the seeds were sown. Now, it's taken me time to develop my television career because, of course, it's a skill in like any profession. But here we are, 12 years after I retired from Formula One, and I'm involved in a production business that actually produced the Formula One show. So talk about evolution and seeing opportunity. So I think that without really realizing how valuable that advice was when I was a teenager, I now do something similar with our 11-year-old son, sowing the seeds of allowing him to grow as a child, but to have visions for whatever it is you want to do. Try and do it to the best of your ability. And whatever it is you're doing, always have one eye on the future. Always have one eye on where you would like to be or where you see yourself in the future. Because what you're doing is creating these roadmaps in your mind. And with those roadmaps, if you get to that junction, it's not a surprise.
Now, did you always have that kind of ultra long-term view in mind, or was it part of simply stitching together lots of small steps? Which was more important, the next small step or the big goal?
Well, it's interesting actually. You asked me that, and we've known each other for many years, and I don't recall you ever asking me that, because I have always had, let's say, a primary focus on the next step. Because how do you walk a mile? You walk a mile a step at a time. So you can't just look at a mile and then expect to be there. You've got to put in the effort. But of course, within that mile, there's a goal at the end of it. So the answer, I think, is I've had both as a vision. I knew what I wanted to achieve. And of course, I couldn't possibly know in terms of becoming a Grand Prix driver whether I could or could not achieve that, because there's many other factors than just having desire. But I very much focused on, if I do the following steps, if I have this shorter term view on achieving whatever is possible within that given day or that given race or that given year, then those are the building blocks that then create the foundations for the future. So I think the reality, and of course it's going to be very individual how people will describe their visions, but I see the bigger picture, but focus on the smaller steps that are necessary within that.
Now, GCI, of course, is a company that's planning to really change the face of retirement planning for so many people in their country and indeed internationally. When it comes to planning for the future, obviously it's really important to work with the best people. And you were very blessed to work with and indeed be teammate to some pretty talented people through your career. Just talk to me about the importance of the caliber of people that you worked with during your professional racing career.
Well, I think that in preparing for this conversation, I think that what GCI are doing is, I get very excited about this personally, about having a vision to use the technology that we have to serve people, to make better decisions, more consistent decisions. And the sport of Formula One, at the end of the day, it's a vehicle with a driver. So it's hardware and software combined with a human operating it, going around a racing track. But there's so many other steps that are put in place, in simulation and in software development, in CFD, which is computational fluid dynamics, and trying to come up with the best aerodynamic shape to have the most efficient race car. There's so many technology steps, which of course are all influenced by human beings. So the human element's never removed from this integration and use of the technology that the modern world allows us to have. But it helps us make better decisions. Why would we not use software to present 3 or 4 options rather than having to look through the thousands of different options that may be there on any given day when it comes to trading or whether it comes to investments? And so I personally find that very exciting. And when I look at how I was able to work within that technology sport, of course, as the driver, I ultimately had to come up head to head with another driver and understand how I could beat that person. Now, in the case of teammates, we get to see each other's data, which in simple terms means I can understand how he turns the steering wheel, how he applies throttle, brakes, the speed trace that he has through a corner. So it really gives you an opportunity to break down the decisions your competitor who ultimately your teammate is your competitor, how he is able to deliver the lap time that he can. And this has always been a fascinating aspect of the human performance and how you get the best out of people whilst using the technology that's available.
Now, if we bring these couple of strands together, you know, having a real purpose, getting the best people, getting the best technology, you ended your Formula One career driving for a team called Red Bull Racing. Red Bull owned by an Austrian entrepreneur, Dietrich Mateschitz, and you've worked with Red Bull and continue to work with Red Bull way back since the mid-2000s. Working with an organization like that must have, given you an insight and also helped you to deploy your experience in creating world-class solutions. Because Red Bull, let's face it, it's an energy drinks business, and yet you joined them right at the beginning of their Formula One journey. And just a few years later, they won the World Championship and beat all the car manufacturers. They really disrupted the industries. Just talk to me a little bit about your experience of working with them and the culture and the approach that they brought to our industry.
Well, I think that there's many different personalities out there. There's many different successful people and successful organizations, and they have their own personality as a company, which of course comes through in the management style or the leadership style. And some are more self-assured, let's say, stroke arrogant in how they present themselves, and others are more humble. And I was curious when I joined Red Bull as to how this very successful individual who's got a fantastic team of people working towards the marketing and sales of this energy drink would approach coming into a technology sport. Because the technology in developing a liquid that goes in a metal can that then gets sold into shops and ultimately to customers is a different technology than when you're dealing with aerodynamics, when you're dealing with horsepower, when you're dealing with software, when you're dealing with fuel efficiency. There's a different technology challenge. And the thing that was really refreshing to me was the empowerment that Mr. Mateschitz, the owner of Red Bull, he empowered the people that were there operationally within the team. What do you need? It's my responsibility to deliver that resource to you. And then it's quite clear, it's your responsibility to then use that resource to develop a race-winning car. And there was many people when Red Bull bought the Jaguar racing team doubted very much whether it could ever become successful, because the previous history of that team was not really with success. But this is why I get so excited about the power of people and the power of technology, embracing with the right people to make better decisions. Because over the course of the next 5 years, the team was developed, people were put in place, the infrastructure that was necessary to bring it up to a world championship standard to compete with the likes of Ferrari and Mercedes and McLaren, the teams that were the world championship teams at that time. All of that was put in place. And when it reached its crescendo, that team was able to win 4 world championships on back-to-back seasons. 4 constructors world championships, 4 drivers world championships with Sebastian Vettel. And this to me is one of the prouder moments of my career, because I was part of the early days of the foundations of that future success. And it's a great reminder that when people are given responsibility and they're capable of handling responsibility, you don't need to micromanage. Let them do their job. And that's exactly the management style of Mr. Mateschitz. Of course, not everybody will always reach what they believe their potential is or what the expectation of the company is. And then you need to find another role where they can really flourish. And I think that's another great thing that I would say from the world of Formula One. If somebody's struggling in a particular role, they didn't come to the company because they didn't have qualifications. Maybe they're just not suited for that particular role under that pressure or under the time constraints that are there. So Formula One will find an opportunity to place them somewhere else within the organization and then see if they can grow. So we tend to be not a sort of hire and fire world. We tend to be a sort of nurture, grow, plan for the future, find the best people, and understand that the pressure on an engineer or a mechanic might see him do that role for 10, 15 years. Very unlikely he's going to do the same role for 30 years or more. So there is this, this constant sort of turnaround of planning and bringing that wealth of knowledge back into the organization, and then finding the younger, hungry, motivated people to then carry the battle, if you like, on at the front line.
Now, GCI is it's a fully independent wealth management firm. And one of the things that I've been talking to GCI about is that in Formula One, it's very important that we align ourselves with the right suppliers, the right contractors, the people that we want to work with. Just talk to me about that importance, where a team chooses who supplies their brakes, who provides the software, who supplies the engine, because a Formula One team doesn't make every component that goes into creating a winning car. They choose who they work with. So having that independence of thought and independence of aligning with who you work is an extremely important part of making a successful team, isn't it?
It's critical. Without great suppliers, you will find an issue at some point. And what we're looking for in our suppliers is honesty. We have in Formula One a responsibility culture, not a blame culture. So if I was to crash the car when I'm driving on the circuit, I don't come back and try and make excuses. I come back and say, my fault, my responsibility, this is what I think happened, won't happen again. If an engineer makes a bad call on strategy, he puts his hand up. If a mechanic doesn't put the wheel on the car properly at the pit stop, and bear in mind, they're under immense pressure trying to deliver 2-second pit stops, incredibly fast, examples of human performance in what is a technology sport. This is actually one of the more, analog aspects of the whole Grand Prix, but critically important to success. So we look for suppliers that not can do the honeymoon period well, because everyone does honeymoon period well. It's those who handle the hiccups and the bumps on the road, which inevitably happen in business, inevitably happen in life, and step forward and really show that they have solutions. They're able to deliver for you. And in this respect, Formula One is a technology sport, but to use the old expression, it isn't rocket science. It's not far away from rocket science, but we're looking for people that can deliver on time, on budget, repeatedly, and don't try and withhold information if they know something's going wrong. As soon as they see something going wrong, they let us know, because then we can react, we can plan, we can adapt. And a company that doesn't adapt, and a business that doesn't adapt, using technology and using great suppliers, and occasionally if you have to change if somebody's consistently not able to deliver at the level that your customers expect.
It's great listening to you making that analogy back to the guys at GCI, and actually when I was talking to them, we were just reflecting on the fact that you as a Formula One driver are a bit like the wealth manager. You're kind of out there making the key decisions, but at the end of the day, you're reliant on all of those constituent parts. In the case of a wealth manager, it's the investment platform, it's a portfolio, it's the tools that are available to you. Now, let's just give an example of where having the right tools and the right people made such a difference to you. David, you're a multiple Grand Prix winner. You won the Monaco Grand Prix. You live in Monte Carlo. You have won the Monaco Grand Prix on 2 occasions. And I know on one of those occasions, it was thanks to the team having real-time information, real-time data, and being able to respond to that helped you to win the Grand Prix. Just talk to us about that story.
Yeah, I've been part of Formula One from the early 90s as a test driver. And if I look at how the technology has developed and the computing power has enabled us to have big data, but to understand how to focus on the data that's really important to us, because if you just look at everything, then it would be a bit mind-boggling. So you've got to have layers of software that would enable you to direct you to where real issues may lie, or where you may have a reliability issue in the future. A driver can be the voice of the car, and certainly we can tell the engineers if we feel something isn't quite right. But in some cases, we don't even know there's an issue. And that Monaco Grand Prix victory that you talk about, there was an oil issue, an oil leak with the engine. I was blissfully unaware leading the Grand Prix, but one of the engineers using the real-time data being beamed back from the car noticed an issue realized that this would have been a critical issue if he didn't then trigger a transfer, because we always had an auxiliary oil tank in the case that we were using more oil. And it was a little backup system. So he was able to trigger that system, make sure that the engine ran reliably, there was no hot spots. And I made it to the end of the Grand Prix, celebrated, of course, the success and spraying the champagne. And it was only when we got back to the debrief after the race that it was brought to my attention how close we were to losing that victory. And this, to me, made it even sweeter, because I had done my job on the track, but my team, using the data, using the software, using their best judgment and ability to analyze the information they had at their disposal, made a critical engine-saving decision, which took us out of the jaws of defeat and delivered us a victory.
Now, just to put a little bit of perspective on this, you had none other than, I believe, Michael Schumacher about 1 second behind you for most of that race. So you've got the greatest driver of the era, arguably, breathing down your neck. Yeah. And yet the team and the technology helped you and your talent to get the win.
Yeah, this is, of course, why I'm particularly proud of that victory, because the team could have told me we had an issue, but they took the judgment call at that time. That was information that I probably wouldn't be able to deal with or do anything with in the throes of driving at 180 miles an hour around the streets of Monaco. There isn't much room for error there. Every lap you're kissing a barrier as you make your way around the circuit. So you're in a very heightened zone of concentration, glancing in your mirrors and seeing the red Ferrari with Michael Schumacher, who you know that if you make one mistake, that will be his opportunity to take victory from you. So I think it's a wonderful example of teamwork. And this is why, for me in business beyond Formula One, I look for that same level of team players, people that understand their responsibility, understand when to raise an issue and understand when to hold it. Because if it's surplus to the requirements of your fellow co-worker at that moment, why cloud his mind and his judgment by giving him information that he is not able to do anything about? And so, we are about transparency, but it's also about the transfer of information at key moments and understanding. If somebody runs in the room going, "Oh my God," that doesn't help anybody, because what does that mean? Does that mean they've won the lottery? Does that mean there's a major problem? So you need concise information, pointers, whether it's a human pointer or whether it's using the data that's available to give you trends within the markets to understand this is a moment for us to change our investment strategy, and it needs to be done calmly.
Now, before we came online to do our little presentation, we had a look at the WealthBit platform that GCI have put in place. And when I was looking at the WealthBit platform, I was thinking about the analogy with the kind of dashboard that they have. Modern Formula One cars, the dashboard is effectively the steering wheel. You have a lot of functionality, a lot of applications on a modern steering wheel. It looks more like a games console than a steering wheel as perhaps previous generations would have known it. What do those applications and what does that functionality on the steering wheel, if you like, dashboard that you have, what does that enable you to do? Because I think people are very surprised that a Formula One driver at 300 kilometers per hour can be using all that functionality real time to manage risk and optimize performance.
Well, in truth, a lot of the elements and the controls that we have on the steering wheel could be done remotely, could be done by the engineers in the pits and in the paddock. But it's one of the decisions of our governing body, the FIA, that they want as much of the key decision making to be kept in the cockpit. Because although we're a technology sport, it's about human performance. And in sport, it's about man against man, woman against woman. It's about bringing collective, the best people from around the world and finding out on that given day who's doing a better job. So a lot of things like engine modes for in the case of a hybrid Formula One engine, which is what we have today, a combination of the electrical energy and the internal combustion engine, turbocharged engine, producing around 1,000 horsepower and qualifying, the most efficient, the most fuel efficient engines in existence in the world. And, I say that with pride because, of course, I'm living and working within the Formula One industry. And a lot of the technology that's been developed in racing has found its way into the everyday cars that you and I drive around the world, including the fully electric cars that are on offer today. So I think that all of that technology that is available, the driver is encouraged to be the conductor of that technology. So the engineers will give you instructions, or you may think, okay, I have an issue with the entry to the corner. So I know that I can change my differential. I'll not get overly technical, but you can, the rear axle, you can stiffen this or loosen this, and it changes the actual body language of the car. So you are manipulating the vehicle a little bit like trimming an aircraft. When you see the pilots, they put the flaps down for landing because it increases the drag over lift so they can land at a lower speed, or they bring them in for efficiency when you're in the cruise. So we can do little things like that from within the cockpit to balance the car as we go through the Grand Prix. And no surprise that the better or the more successful drivers tend to be a little better at lateral thinking. They're sort of tapping your head and rubbing your tummy. They tend to be able to do more than one thing at the same time.
Now, I was just thinking the sustainability is a word that gets used a lot these days. People talk about environmental sustainability, business sustainability, performance sustainability, maintaining and sustaining performance over time is, as you know, critical when you're being competitive in Formula One. And a lot of people will criticize our sport, David, from time to time by saying, Lewis Hamilton winning 6 world championships looks a bit boring from the outside. Red Bull winning 4 world championships looked a bit boring from the outside. But actually what we're seeing from the inside are great teams sustaining performance over time. And that's a magic formula to achieve, isn't it?
Well, I think it was Bill Gates who said that success is a lousy teacher. It makes people think they can't fail. And I think that quote, whether it was Bill Gates or not, it is a great reminder that you cannot rest on your laurels. You cannot say, well, we're winning. There we go, the job is done. We have constantly got to evolve. We've got to be looking for opportunity. And even in success, what we'll do is look at the data, debrief with all of the relevant people within the organization to understand, okay, we won the Grand Prix, but what was the thing that could have lost us that race? Was it the driver? Did he make a mistake on a pit stop? Did he position the car in the wrong way? And if it's Lewis Hamilton who did that, the team will say, Lewis, your second pit stop, you didn't position the car right. There's no fear of telling a 6-time world champion that he's made a mistake, and he takes it. He goes, thank you. I'll not make that mistake, or I'll try not to make that mistake, because of course it's part of being a human that sometimes we make mistakes. So I think the analysis is very important, even in success, and to stay ahead of your competition and to have that sustained performance over time. You've got to use the technologies that are available to you today, but you've got to be seeking out the future opportunities. And that's where I like to see hunger in people's eyes. I like to hear the nervous excitement about what could be possible when I'm talking to people. It's not that I'm wanting to hear someone living in a fantasy world, but I like someone that's got an element of, what if we tried this? Because there is no harm and no embarrassment in failing in something because you try. But there is, of course, a big issue for any company if you don't try to evolve, because your competition, if they're a wee bit hungrier, will overtake you.
Now, we've talked about growth, we've talked about having a purpose, we've talked about sustaining performance and sustainability. Talk me through your plan for the next 10 years, David, if that's not too big a question, because Formula One's going to continue changing as a sport. It's set a carbon neutral objective for 2030, for example. You're going to continue changing. You're, of course, a very successful broadcaster. You're a brand ambassador for a number of companies. And then you have your very successful television production company, Whisper. So what's the future look like for you? And are you still planning those long-term goals?
Yeah, I'm planning the long-term goals, but of course, taking one step at a time, so I think you've got to set those achievable targets and to work with good people. And I'm always looking for where an opportunity lies with individuals. And I have certain attributes which can be, I think, useful for a company that's looking to grow. But of course, when you mentioned the television production business, I know a lot more about television today than I did when I started in the business 12 years ago. But I would not call myself an expert in this industry. But thankfully, my two partners can call themselves experts in the industry. They are career television people. They have passion, they have hunger, they have drive. And collectively, our vision is to make Whisper the largest independent production company in the world. Now, today we sit around third in the sort of sports production companies that are out there, which is nice. It's a podium. But third is not where we're aiming for. We want to be number one. So the vision for the business, and we have now a strategic partnership with Sony Pictures, who've invested in the company because they don't have a sports division within their company, and they have opportunity within their distribution networks that will help us as a business. So it's a wonderful partnership to see us all go forward. And the vision is to put time, energy, and continue to employ good people. We won't make every decision right. And when I go into presentations, I'm very honest to the point of saying we won't get everything right, which is a high risk thing to say in a presentation. But I have the absolute belief, and I'll say this to the people we're presenting to, but I guarantee you, we will never try and pretend we've got an issue, or we'll never try and withhold that information for you. And we will be working on a solution at the same time as telling you there's a problem, because we are motivated to learn from mistakes, to grow from mistakes, and to use the technology and the people around us to make better decisions in the future. And I think a lot of people are very nervous about saying, I made a mistake. I love people who acknowledge they make mistakes, because then they're looking at that as a source of, right, what did I do? How do I not do it in the future? And that is already making you a stronger person and a better team player.
So you're still putting all the elements in play. 25 years after you joined Formula One, you're still putting the best in teams together, the best in technology, the best in solutions. David, it's been a pleasure to talk to you today, and I hope the GCI audience sharing your wisdom will have enjoyed those comments that you gave us. Thanks for spending time with us, and thanks very much for taking the opportunity that's been afforded by GCI to give us your thoughts on what's been a long and successful career, and one that seems to have left you with a very nice set of opportunities looking to the future.
Yeah, well, Mark, I really appreciate that. And for everyone at GCI, thank you for the opportunity to share some time with an old friend and colleague. Mark and I have been working with each other through motorsport for many, many years, and continuing in our journey. So I hope everyone watching this takes something away on the positive. And well, one day, I hope I can look you in the eye rather than looking at you all through a digital screen.
Thanks very much, David.
DC, Mark, that was absolutely amazing. There were so many golden nuggets in what you put across to us, and all of it really aligned and resonated with the GPS theme that we had. So thank you. There were three really big take-homes for me. And the first one was that finding purpose in life from an early age is really important. But if you haven't found it at an early age, start now. Second of all, use data in all decision making, and then use technology to turn complex concepts into simple concepts. And then the third one was that maintaining a highly disciplined life leads to success. And DC, in your case, it certainly has. And I believe you're actually more successful financially now than you were even during your racing career, which is phenomenal. Then I see that there were three questions which actually popped up during the webinar, and they were upvoted. And I'm going to run through them. Greg, one of them pertains to you, and the other two I think lie in my court. The first one was relating to the BHAG. The question is, your BHAG seems ambitious. You're on less than 1,000 clients in the green now, and your target is 150,000 in 5 years' time. How realistic is this? Well, it's true. This is an ambitious target. It is a stretch goal. What we've put in place are growth engines to ensure that we actually achieve this target within the 5-year period. The biggest growth engine by far is that we are relying on our existing clients referring other clients to us. In other words, our existing clients must at all times be receiving that 360 degrees of excellence that we are striving for. The second question was, you mentioned portfolios of unit trusts. Isn't a share portfolio a better idea and cheaper? Greg, this one's yours.
Thanks, Alex. Share portfolios are really not our favorite. They're very old-fashioned ways of investing, and there's a number of problems that we find with share portfolios. Probably the most important is that they generally don't actually do that well in terms of performance. If you were to go and do an average of all the share portfolios that a stockbroker runs, I would bet that they don't generally beat the benchmark that they're trying to achieve. And then the other key thing for the investor is that they're not that cheap. Their fees are not necessarily that much cheaper than a unit trust. And there's a hidden layer of fees that often occur. And not all stockbrokers do this, but many do. And they are incentivized to trade the portfolio because they earn brokerage at the back end. So that is something that the investor doesn't see. And with that churn, you have problems with CGT and things like that. So we really don't like share portfolios. From the manager of those share portfolios point of view, their focus is on their funds generally. So a portfolio manager or fund manager is generally running their equity fund or their balanced fund, and that's their focus. Multiple share portfolios are quite hard to manage. There's a lot of operations that has to be done in the background, and they're generally, so in the end, they're just not a great investment vehicle that we think. And also they're not really verified either. You can't see the performance of how stockbrokers' share portfolios have done because they're not public. And a unit trust is out in the public and you can't hide. The performance is there. So the transparency is there's much better transparency in a unit trust.
Thanks, Greg. The third question is back to me again, and it is, I like the look of the software you use. Can I play with it if I am not a GCI client? Yes, absolutely. There is a login button in the top right-hand side of our website. It says client login. Click on that button, register yourself. It will go to a pseudo wealth manager account where you are able to play to your heart's content and make your plan your own. Thanks, everyone. That wraps up the 2020 Wealth Tour, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you again next year.